The views and opinions on Where Did the Road Go belong to those making them. Do not mistake allowing freedom of speech for agreement. This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by the following amazing individuals: Greg Ross, Bill Illuminati, Allison Cook, Yvonne Williams, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, and Michael Frisky. Thank you all for helping to make this show possible. And if you'd like to help out, become a patron at wheredidtheroadgo.com. It's only $3 a month.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have with me, Natalie.
Hi.
One,
yes.
in studio, and not in studio, Mr. Steve Berg.
Hey, how are you doing, friends?
I feel like I just talked to you on your show.
Well, you did, and your episode's coming out next week, and it was fantastic.
I'm glad you liked it. I really enjoyed that one, actually.
Yeah, we had a ball. I mean, I think we ended up talking like close to 2 hours, and I was like, oops, I took a lot of your time. Sorry.
If I'm on a call for less than 3 hours, that's unusual.
Right.
So, I mean, so far we've already been doing this for 25 minutes while I go, why is the sound not working right? And it's probably Natalie's fault.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I will always take the...
Yeah, but Natalie and I got to meet. We got to chit-chat, and get to know each other, so it was perfect.
So... I don't know. Where do we start this one?
Well, Natalie. Well, I was telling you guys.
You said you were going to talk about the things you're excited about.
Yeah.
When you turn it on me.
Well, I am. I feel like I'm very excited about some things right now.
Let's hear about it.
One, there is this book that I don't know if it just got reprinted, but it is called Night Siege, and it's not it's not the book about the Hudson Valley written by Phil Brogno. No, it's a different Night Siege, and it's about kind of like a Skinwalker Ranch, like everything is present on this like farm in Rome, Ohio, and like I think it was 1981 or 1982. But it's been kind of this Fortean white whale book where it was it was just like I think he self-published it. This guy named Dennis Pilches. And it's been a fascinating story because it's so weird. Over the course of the summer, this like family like gets accosted by like Bigfoot type creatures, like shadow people, crazy like cigar box UFOs, and like just like the works, right? But this book has been this like thing. I've always been like, I can't get my a copy of it, or it's too expensive. But they reprint it, so now it's out there again. And I heard a rumor that Dennis Pilches, the investigator, his I guess he had all these audio recordings of different sounds, and just his investigation, he was like meticulous about having these audio recordings. And the rumor is that these tapes have been unearthed, but it's just a rumor for now. So I'm excited about that.
Okay. Nice. I think I bought Jadu from Keel. Like I had been looking for one that wasn't like $300.
Right.
And I finally found one for like $50 and went, okay, I'll get it. And then it got reprinted.
That is the thing. I did the same thing with Passport to Magonia, where I bought like a $150 copy and because I was tired of waiting around for it.
Yep.
And then it got reprinted. I was like, well, shoot.
But you still have the original then, right?
I do. Well, I think even the old one I have is probably a second printing. I don't even think it's a first printing, but it was worth it to me at the time because, that book had been eluding me for many years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm all, in Seriah, I feel like you've talked about this on your show, which I'm obviously a big fan of. But I'm really interested in the idea of hyperstitions right now.
I know the word, but I can't tell you what it means.
I do.
Well, like a hyperstition is kind of like the opposite of a superstition, where a superstition is like a story that is made up, and like it stays fictitious. But a hyperstition is like a story that it's like then the fiction becomes real.
Okay, all right.
And I'm interested in hyperstitions in relationship to like UFOs and all this other high strangeness. Like, where even like from like like how it changes and stuff like that, like the UFO phenomenon, for instance. It's like, I wonder if it's thought about and talked about and narratives are made up about, like like almost like the Kenneth Arnold, the famous example is, Kenneth Arnold said he saw like delta-shaped crafts. Then the reporter says, they were flying saucers because he described them as saucers skipping across the water.
Right.
But then everyone started saying flying saucers, which that's almost a hyperstition in a way. And so I'm interested, like maybe the phenomenon of UFOs is interacting with our stories, which, is like part Greg Bishop co-creation theory and kind of even is probably very Jungian. I think that even almost might be what Carl Jung was getting around in his UFO essay, trying to get around to.
Josh, I think, is also working on something along those lines, but someone just left a comment saying, we talk about these things as entities, but maybe they are more like NPCs and they just take the form of what's appropriate, generated for temporary use, and act in ways that are appropriate to the occasion, the mental occasion. Basically, the Matrix universe acting through some creative principle provides this experience for some people sometimes. How it demonstrates or how it determines whether a trickster version is appropriate or a helpful, pleasant version may be something it calculates based on people involved and the situation, or could be random, but I doubt these are free will agents with actual lives. Same with aliens, angels, and craft.
I mean, that just makes me think of lucid dreaming, because that's how characters in my dreams react. I'm just one person, but imagine that on a larger scale with multiple people. It sounds like the same kind of engagement.
Yeah, I really I'm not sure where that quote was from. It was from
from a listener. Yeah.
I think that is wonderful. I mean, that is like, kind of where my head is at these days. I'm not saying like this is what I believe. I don't have a belief system wrapped up in it, but you get excited about new ideas sometimes, or just every once in a while get hot on a new angle. And what that quote from your listener, I think, is very astute, and especially like that kind of sums up how I feel right now in a way.
And that also, and Josh brought this up last time he was on, connects into like the whole Alan Wake game series, where the author is writing the book as these things are happening to him, and there's something directing how he's writing it, and he's trying to turn it good while all these bad things keep happening.
See, I don't have much of the media angle, but in my experiences, because I would do it a lot from a sort of like with outsider art, I wasn't coming at it from a space where I knew a lot of this stuff until afterward, because I would research it after the experiences I had, obviously. But so I would engage with these characters in dreams, and almost exclusively in dreams, or like dream-like experiences, and they would kind of explain the same things that like the commenter talked about. Almost like they were, I can't remember the exact quotes, but there was one that was just like, I don't remember what they said. It was something like, I don't have a self to be conscious about, or something like that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And they would often impress that. I'm like, well, are you me then? And they'd be like, not entirely. And I'm like, well, wait, can you expound on that?
I mean, eventually we're all connected. So. But
I mean, it was never clear cut, but it was like they couldn't explain it to me. They said, because I didn't have the lexicon or the frame of reference to really bounce off of. And this was all being translated by my brain into something that would kind of make sense.
If you were conscious, you would be channeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, although it did feel partly conscious, like I was aware. I was aware of what reality and...
If you were talking to someone else with that through this thing...
And I did try that, but it wasn't quite the same, because then it was too much of me. It was more dissociated me, though.
Right.
And I would maybe get bits and pieces of that through in the channeling, but it just wasn't as pure. It wasn't as distilled. It was too garbled, and too many expectations were being put on it. And I'd be in a trance state, but it was still just not... I would look over the transcripts and be like... It just didn't have the same purity to it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, are you using a technique to get into the lucid state?
Okay, this was so long ago. Like, so it was me and a friend, and we were trying different stuff to do it. And he was using, like, he would read stuff online on how to try to trance somebody out, or like hypnotize them. And I was like, well, it really just matters if I let it happen to me. I don't think the technique really makes that much of a difference, but we'll try different stuff. So some of it was more successful than others, and we actually documented all this. This was back in 2005, so I have my laptop in front of me to try to look up all the stuff, but it's just is so much to try to condense. But
right.
Yeah, so these dreams were happening, and first we started with Ouija because that's a good way to contact the subconscious.
Doesn't everyone?
Yeah, but we weren't doing it in a way that we were like, oh, it's going to be so spooky. It was definitely for me to try to get the stuff out and see if also he might be able to bring some stuff in from his side of things. It was just experimental. We were young people, but it was fascinating because a lot of stuff that came out, I think the Ouija was more successful than me channeling, to be honest. It was more because I think the two people were involved. It might have added that other element that wasn't just me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So there was something more.
You created a third thing.
Words are not with me tonight, but like, yeah, there was more of a collaborative reality there.
Names are hard, words are hard. That's my motto.
They are. That's really interesting. You know, like I can kind of see that because, you know, just channeling, it seems like, you know, you're just kind of like this is not a weird way to put it, but like raw dogging it, you know? But like, yeah,
I use that term way too
much. Like a Ouija board seems like, well, it's like, it is a tool of divination, right? Mm-hmm. So like, and I like how you kind of said, like, you were sharing with another person, so you both had this place to put your shared focus in on. And maybe that's like, you could do it with anything. Maybe you could do it with like a rock or a cheeseburger. Who knows? Yeah,
it doesn't really. It's just like the group ritual kind of mindset. It's the same kind of thing, but 2 people was a lot more manageable for me anyway. I've never tried it with multiple people and had any success. It's
interesting.
Funny.
That is where the Seth material started.
The Ouija stuff, yeah, I remember that.
And what I only found out recently is that a lot of Jeremy Vaeni's experiences started with a Ouija board session.
It's
I didn't know that. Interesting.
So the reason I found out about, let's go back a little ways for history, but so I have some investment in like the psychological portion of it. I'm not a really big fan of like the way psychiatry is right now, but one thing I learned when I was 14 and first started on the Ouija board is basically I moved to Georgia where my grandma had died and left a house to my mom and I. And it was currently occupied by my 17-year-old cousin. And so being kids and whatever, I had this bizarre experience. First night, I had sleep paralysis. Like I'd had sleep paralysis before. Nothing like I did that night. It was on another level and I haven't had anything like it since. And so we're like, oh, we have a Ouija board. Let's just break that out and see what happens. And, you know, he was raised in the sort of, you know, Southern Christian mindset. So it's going to be a very different experience with him. And we hadn't really messed around with it that much. So this was the first time we really dove into it. And what ended up happening was we discovered much more about his traumas, not anything superstitious. Oh. And it was harrowing. It was a deep dive into his psyche. And I discovered, and I was only 14, but I started piecing the stuff together and really understanding like, oh, and his name was Steve, oddly enough. And I'm like, this is him. He basically seemed to create this externalized entity that was causing our sleep paralysis. When he left the house, and I didn't tell him this, I just told my mom, I'm like, we got to have a little focus group here. He left the house to go back to his mom's where we felt like he would be safer. I think that the house was really triggering his traumas and really not letting him heal. Like he needs to be in a better space. I know he likes to, you know, he's a teenager. He wants to be away from his mom, but I think that would help. And it seemed to for a while at least. But it definitely dropped all the activity in that house, which was strange. And at that point, I'm like, I don't even know if I believe in anything like ghosts. I think it's us. It's like, you know, but I was starting to piece it together. I didn't know anything about that stuff at that time, but that's what really got me interested initially. That was my inaugural experience with having any interest in like paranormal stuff or like parapsychological stuff. So that was the reason I broke out the Ouija in 2005, because I was having all these intense experiences because I'd had a lot of trauma. I'm like, well, maybe I'll learn something about that and start to heal it. Seems more functional than a lot of therapy I'd been through at that point.
Right.
But what ended up happening, and that was kind of true to a point, but not really, it ended up being very strange and leading into these experiences that I talked about, like with Heather and stuff. So it all ties in. I didn't expect that, but yeah.
Okay.
The point being is I think channeling can do the same thing. Like I was on Michelangelo's podcast, the Self-Portraits as Other People. I was his first episode on there because I was talking about multiple selves and dissociative identities and things that the way trauma, paranormal, psychedelic stuff all feeds into each other or relates to each other and how it's manifested similarly. And trauma has a huge impact on the brain and what it does to the brain. And for some people, especially people who are neurodivergent, autistic, ADHD, that kind of, spectrum disorder or neurodevelopmental stuff, they tend to seem to develop these dissociative identities to function, especially because you have to mask and stuff. So if you're in a traumatic experience like that, I have friends who occupy a single body that lives in California right now, and they're all very different people, and they've been like that for a very long time, but they're all extremely distinct people. And that body, that person, we used to be roommates, and we had so many weird things happen, like really, truly unexplainable stuff. I'm like, you got to reel that person in, see what's up.
Man.
Yeah, because they were like manifesting as like these shadowy tulpas and stuff to other people as well. It was kind of an issue. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Well, one, we now know for a scientific fact that trauma is imprinted in our DNA, which is very interesting. But as you were talking and talking about your experiences, you almost wonder, how you said, I didn't know if I believe in ghosts or this stuff anymore. But it may not be like ghosts how we think of it,
Exactly.
because even visual manifestations of 40 honor or high strangeness or any of this stuff could be projections maybe from us, that's work, that a non-human intelligence or piece of technology is interacting with, but it's pulling a projection from our sea of archetypes. I know that sounds like some woo-woo ideas, but
it's in line with what I think about all the time.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, because
interesting.
No, okay. So I should clarify. I should restate that. I didn't believe in ghosts at the time in the way that they're presented in the typical spiritualist sense from, the spiritualist movement, which really popularized them, just almost like these physical plasma beings or something that emit from the body at the time of death or something. I wasn't really thinking of that at that point. I'm like, because it was so specific to my cousin's trauma, and it was like he was projecting and manifesting this person who had been dead who caused all these traumas to him. And he was absolutely convinced it was their ghost, wandering. And I'm like, this is something that he's internalized from his trauma. And that's somehow worse and somehow more powerful, because it was not just this dead man resurrected or whatever. It was this idea of this person, but the worst possible version, if that makes sense.
Right.
And it's going around assaulting everybody in the house by trying to choke them or... So I have a history of sleep paralysis because I have, weird brain stuff anyway. But it started when I was a kid, and at no point was I like, that was a paranormal experience. I was like, wow, my brain just did a thing. When I had this the very first night I was there, and my cousin had been telling me he'd been having those experiences on the phone. I'm like, it's cool. It's fine. It's just a thing your brain does. We're both young. We probably both have it. We're both related. It's a thing. It's called sleep paralysis. And he's like, I guess. And I'm like, I really forgot about it because I was a very heavily skeptical teenager already. So that night when that happened to me, you could say it was like, subconscious stuff, but that didn't really happen to me. This was so viscerally off, and it didn't happen again is the thing. Like, I took steps to prevent it, but it was unlike any sleep paralysis I'd had. I was awake, I was lying on my back, and I remember crossing my leg over my other leg, so I was fully functional, and I was lying there with the song stuck in my head. I'm like, I'm gonna have to pee. Should I get up? It was that kind of thing. I'm like, I don't really want to get up. I'm really tired. We just had a whole long day moving, and it hit just bam out of nowhere. And I'm like, am I having a stroke? What's happening to me right now? And it was like my whole body, something had gone into my body or something and hijacked my nervous system. And I was terrified. I'm like, this has to be a medical thing is my first thought. Like, and then it was as if it was trying to convey a message, and that message was horribly assaulting. And I had never had anything like that during sleep paralysis. And I was laying there with my eyes wide open, like, they do in the movies for sleep paralysis or whatever. And I'm trying to squeak because there was only one place to sleep and we were exhausted. My mom just kind of crashed on the bed next to me. It was like this mattress. And I'm trying to squeak to wake her up. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know if I need 911 or something. And I finally did squeak, and she heard it and rolled over and looked at me, and she said she'd never seen anything like it. I was just like bug-eyed staring at her like, help. And so she actually had to shake me out of it. And I'm like, I need to talk to my cousin right now.
Jeez,
yeah, it was
wild.
It was traumatic because it was not like, my body doing it. It was like somebody else had done it to me.
Yeah.
It was so bizarre and never happened again. Never had that experience again.
I've had so much sleep paralysis. The weird thing about my sleep paralysis is it happens as soon as I lay down.
Really?
That's weird.
Yeah, it's never I wake up and I'm paralyzed.
Yeah, that's all I get.
lay down and then everything shifts. Like I'm not asleep. I haven't had time to get to sleep.
I wish I could do that because people can train themselves to do that.
Yeah, I
into
can't
that
control
state.
it when it happens. I mean, it's always a creepy feeling.
It's always creepy when I get sleep paralysis, but I also like it. I'm like, yeah, I can do stuff now.
I can lucid dream and do stuff that at some point, generally, if I'm having a bad dream, like I'm crashing my car, I'll be like, this is a dream, right? Okay, good. Okay, now I'm going to uncrash the car and continue on.
Well, it's like that one, not the last sleep. I think I've had 2 or 3 since, but that one sleep paralysis where I woke up. Normally you would have been awake and I was like, oh, I'm going to go snoop, see what he's doing down there, see if this is real.
That's right.
And like report back. So I, when I'm in that state, it feels creepy because it's like
you were out of body though.
Well, but I was in sleep paralysis first. And that's how I'm like,
okay.
Do I want to go into lucid dreaming? Do I want to go deeper into REM or do I want to do this weird thing? And so I decided, I was like, oh, this is a really stable paralysis. I can feel that buzzing, that thrumming. My nervous system is in a really stable paralysis. So I'm going to try this. And I rolled out and had to do all the work to like get my dream body up and like moving around. And I do the thing where I'm like, I'm going to open the door and like, no, I don't have to do that. And I just go through the door. And then I walk downstairs and that's when I saw the infrared from the camera as this blinding, strobing, awful, hideous thing in my brain that almost woke me up.
Really interesting.
Yeah, that, and it was from all of the cameras.
Right.
All at once. And I did not expect that. I didn't even think of that. I'm like, what is...
I have wise cams all over the house. And in the dark, they have infrared beams.
It was alarming. And it nearly woke me up. I'm like, and throughout this, because I'm in sleep paralysis and I'm in that weird stage, everything felt creepy. It felt like there were things that were going to come out of the shadows. I mean, nothing did. Because it was actually like I was in the space for real. It was not a dream. I was occupying the space and moving within it and seeing the cameras, like the lights, which I didn't even think of. And I saw the lights were off, which was weird because you should have been up.
Right.
But you weren't. Turned out you'd actually gone to bed right before that.
Yep.
So I was just flummoxed. I'm like, is it just I'm in like the wrong space and it's dark or what's happening? I went as far back as the library.
Right.
And then I stopped and the camera in there was just, I'm like, I can't do the lights. I don't know what this strobing awfulness is. It was
plus,
bizarre.
that's the hallway where all the weird stuff happens anyway.
Yeah, but nothing happened. I was actually
No,
disappointed.
you were the weird thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, if somebody had been there, maybe they would have. I didn't. A scratch had been around. That would have been cool.
That's the hallway where all the
Man,
footsteps come from.
I'll tell you what, you guys are lucky because I have never had a lucid dream that I'm aware of. I've never had sleep paralysis. Not that I really want
not too
sleep
late.
paralysis. Yeah, exactly. I feel like I could pass on that one. But the lucid dreaming, I don't have hardly any dream recall. I almost never remember my dreams.
Oh,
That's terrible.
wow. I'm like
Terrible,
your dichotomous twin because I'm looking at my dream log here just in case. I've got almost 2,000 dreams logged, I think.
Oh my gosh.
And just this year, I'm up to 90, which is kind of slow for me.
I don't write all of mine down because some of them are just boring.
Right.
Like I had a dream yesterday. I had to fix a printer. And then I like half woke up, realized I was dreaming, and continued in my brain trying to fix the printer. And then finally went, why am I trying to fix the printer?
Work dreams
are real.
Work dreams are the worst. They steal your best, time.
Yeah. Yeah. That work dreams should be illegal.
They should. I have to call the dream police on you.
I mean,
exactly.
I have fixed computers in my sleep for real. In that, like I had one computer that I could not figure out what was wrong with it. It just kept crashing. I replaced everything. It kept crashing. But there was nothing obviously wrong with the computer itself. It turns out it was the power supply.
Oh.
It was the only thing I didn't think about. And so in the middle of the night, I suddenly woke up when it's the power supply. It's not getting a constant feed of power. I'm crashing Windows. Cool. Now I can go back to sleep.
I think I told you that it only happened to me once, but it was my own, and it was a hard drive that had, I don't know why I had an external hard drive and not everything backed up on it, but inevitably it crashed. It was like a mechanical failure, and I'm like, oh no, I'd have to take it out and do no, I can't. I was so upset about it. I went to bed, and in the dream, I was like sticking it in the freezer,
Oh, yeah.
And I woke up and stuck it in the freezer. Like, I mean, what can it hurt? And it worked.
Really?
It was just enough to like, and I hadn't heard of that, but then I looked it up and it's a thing. But
oh my God, I didn't know that.
So it depends why the hard drive mechanically fails. If it fails because it's stuck on the platter, putting it in extreme heat or cold will sometimes unstick it. If you get really desperate, dropping it hard will sometimes unstick it. You'll probably lose some data, but
yeah, I wasn't ready to do that.
if it breaks, then there's nothing you can do. But if it's just stuck, it's possible that those things will fix it. It's
it seemed to
ridiculous,
shrink
but
it
works.
just enough to move it.
Wow.
Right. Because it means
There you go.
It means that piece that runs over the platter probably touched the platter and got stuck.
Yeah, and it was just something that my subconscious figured out in the dream, and I woke up like, yes. It sounds insane. It's like dream logic, but it finally worked.
We have lots of information available to us. We just don't know how to access it.
That's exactly right.
Or we do just dream a lot.
True. Unless you're Steve.
Yeah, and then I have nothing. So maybe I have very little information. That is highly, highly likely.
I have a dream. I have a dream. I have a friend who has amazing dreams. He's been a friend he's going to be coming to visit next month, actually. He has absolutely, like, on my level of dreams, and he's had dreams that matched mine. He'd have the same kinds of entities and stuff. This was way back. We had some weird experiences together. I wish he would come on, actually. And he's a stoner now, so he never dreams anymore. And I'm mad about it because his dreams are great. So I don't know if that has any impact on it, but I'm always yelling at him about it.
I know nothing about that. That's not why I don't dream at all. Of course not. No.
Well, my co-host on Last Exit, Joe, does not ever dream. Well, I mean, everyone dreams, but he doesn't remember them at all. And he's just like, I close my eyes and then I open them back up. That's all that happens.
That's pretty much for me too. Oh man.
Whereas I wake up going, am I still dreaming? Wait, no. Yep, no. Let me look at the clock. Those aren't numbers. Still dreaming.
I went through a whole phase in my adolescence because of my neurodivergence. My specific brand, I guess this is severely common. So when I hit puberty, my brain just kind of went haywire and I didn't know what was what and what was real and if I was dreaming or awake or what. And it was just like this existential crisis for years. What I didn't figure out then, and I know now, is like, if I'm really in that state, why didn't I just try to like fly?
Right.
As I can always at least float in a dream.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's never so real that I can't defy physics. I really am angry at my younger self for not figuring that out. That hack was so obvious.
I could say all that anguish.
Yeah.
I've had so many dreams where I've floated, like if I'm moving quickly and suddenly I'm like lifting off the ground just slightly. And then I'm thinking, why don't I do this more often? It's way easy. Then I wake up and I'm like, right, because that's a dream.
Who was it said that that's likelier in dreams because in that space it's almost like your primitive brain is back in the womb, so you're in this floating sort of amniotic, watery space.
Oh.
So physics will kind of conform to that watery experience. It's not really flight; it's more like swimming. I thought that was interesting because it kind of did fit with my experiences. It's kind of like that thicker. You're not weightless, but it's more like a water experience.
Going back to ghosts, I don't think there's a singular explanation for ghosts. Mm-hmm. And even the ghosts that seem like they're similar to one another, I think have different explanations. Because I do like what's essentially called the stone tape theory, that the environment will record certain events, particularly emotionally strong events in the environment, and other people are capable of picking up that information and witnessing it, decades, centuries later. Also interesting when you hear reports of soldiers who are marching along like an area they would have marched, and they're half underground because the ground level has risen since then. And I think you could have spirits of the dead, but I think a lot of it tends to be, us or things pretending to be what we want it to be.
Uh-huh.
So coming at this from an old paleontological student standpoint, I am one of those that argues, why do we not see ghost dinosaurs?
Bigfoot.
That's not a dinosaur, though.
No, it's an ape.
It's a hominid. And we don't have anything necessarily that correlates, but you don't see dinosaurs. You see, so non-avian dinosaurs.
There are people
or pterosaurs.
Who see, is that what you just said, pterosaurs?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
But they're extremely inaccurate. So that's where it gets interesting.
Like there are places in like I can't remember where it is, but there's like brontosaurus legends.
In Africa.
Mm-hmm. Mocha. Oh, what the hell is the name of it?
Mocha or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But again, it's interesting because they're more like
reptiles.
No, they look more like a child's idea of a dinosaur. It like, especially when they drew it, it didn't look like what we know from, especially growing evidence from the fossil record.
Right.
They look like these monstrous mashups or something
Right.
and so there are, the old reports of people seeing pterosaurs and stuff, but they're extremely like those bad toys that you get from like the 80s out of those packs. They didn't look like the real thing. They looked like somebody's idea without an idea of what the fossils look like.
There's also
that's fascinating to me.
Picture. There was a picture
where they're holding it
that doesn't seem to actually exist. But I mean, I remember seeing it. Plenty of other people remember seeing it.
I've seen it.
Nobody can find it.
I saw it, but it was also terrible. What, did it get removed or something?
Well, I've seen the picture, but there's one that's like been confirmed a hoax, but it's like a big
because it looked like a bad B movie type of creature.
Yeah, no, but there was a real photo from the late 1800s of them holding one of these creatures.
I remember Ivan T. Sanderson, like towards the end of his life, was saying that there was like a genuine Thunderbird picture.
Yeah.
And then he passed away and no one really knew if he had it or if, he had access to it. But like that whole narrative. But for a while, every once in a while you hear like on, Reddit or somewhere like on the internet that about like it's some, confirmation of a Thunderbird with via a photograph. And it's fun to dream about and think about. I wish that would happen. But you remember seeing this photograph, Seriah?
Yes.
The 1800s.
A long time ago.
I know what you're talking about because it was in a book that I saw like way back.
Yeah.
Like in the late 90s, I think.
I think I saw it before that.
And it was definitely in a book because this was pre-internet for me.
Yeah, but apparently no one can find it now.
Oh, maybe it just didn't make it onto the internet. That's tragic. But somebody has it in a book somewhere.
Maybe.
Or is that a Mandela effect situation?
Yeah, but if I remember, and I remember it clearly, or like I can bring it up, and it was a black and white photo.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that bad. It was like they kind of like one of those what do they call them? He's like the
sepia.
No, it was like the mermaid things that you can buy like on the kitsch things now. But they did that at first. It was like it's a mermaid. It was just like a ray or some kind of a skate or something that they would cut up to make it look like a humanoid or something. It was one of those situations where they cobbled together clearly parts, maybe horse skin, and it was weird. But it made it look a little bit more realistic. But it still didn't look like a pterosaur. But they knew what a pterosaur was. They'd seen bones and stuff back then.
Right.
So I don't know if they were just...
But now we know that they would have looked much different than what we thought back then.
Yeah.
That's the other interesting thing.
Right.
It was still... So whatever it was their idea of what it looked back then, which looked like a bad B-movie pterosaur.
Don't they think that a lot of dinosaurs, especially like T-Rex and the ferocious like carnivores, had feathers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost certainly.
I mean, that changes everything.
not only that, but T-Rex was likely a scavenger, which is why it had such short arms. Because it would lean over, and
that was. I remember that person. It was not a scavenger. There's tons of teeth marks on living dinosaurs that continue to leave, and they were definitely. They were probably both because I mean they're. A lot of predators will be. But they were opportunistic.
They also didn't stand upright like the initial. Or
they have a more
broken
bird-like posture. It looks more like an ostrich.
Yeah. Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, I mean they were very thick. They were very heavily muscled, but they were definitely hunters. So as far as we can tell, based on their bone structure, and we have juveniles and we have adults. The juveniles probably did a lot of the hunting because they were fast, they were light, they were very thin. They didn't look like the adults. They were very lanky. And then the adults were these thick, plodding, larger, like they didn't have a lot of, but they were still very good hunters because you'll find adult tooth marks on bones and things. They continued to live. So yeah, there's evidence of them actually being fairly decent hunters throughout their life, but they had a slower metabolism later on in their life, and they were very hot-blooded up to that point. Okay.
Natalie used to study paleontology.
Yeah, I worked with the big guys at the University of Utah. So the point is, actually, that kind of works into my interests in the paranormal because it is kind of like digging into the past, and especially with my particular interest with psychopomp work. I don't know. It feels like it has a very compatible essence to it. There's kind of that mystery, but also trying to sleuth how things were. It's hard to describe, and I don't usually talk about it, so it's hard to articulate.
Well,
but the point is, nobody has reported ghosts that look like accurate dinosaurs or pterosaurs.
True.
And that really, to me, I mean, is it just that they're too old? Did they decay over time? Is it,
Can't
how does
hold
that
the
work?
form long enough. Don't have the ego for it.
I mean, there's not a lot of reports of animal ghosts, period, is there?
There's some.
I think there's quite a few.
I mean,
I just don't think it's as
I
popular.
guess,
But
you know, like
usually pets.
Yeah.
right. But I mean, I guess I don't hear about it much. I mean, I'm sure there's cases, but maybe like the dinosaur, it's just extremely rare.
You don't like hear people, when there's the band Ghost of a Saber-Toothed Tiger, you don't see people, you don't see reports of Smilodones and stuff either, like even more recently extinct. Nobody's going around talking about thylacines haunting their houses. And if they are, I really want to know about it.
Well, you wonder, I mean, like I have like a real like love for OBEs, out of place animals. And, you know, in Nebraska, I have like a couple pretty good, like documented cases of people seeing like kangaroos run across a river.
I like that a lot.
And I love that. And like, especially Wisconsin, which is, you know, they're all over the Midwest. There's phantom kangaroo reports. And I mean, like, I also love the ABC's Alien Black Cats, which here in Nebraska, I have reports going back to the 1890s. So the Black Panther thing is like
the black cat thing is big, yeah.
The black cat, it's a thing, you know. So it's very interesting.
I'm also thinking now, like, if people did see these extinct things as ghosts, would they even know what they were looking at?
That's true.
Because if they're not the same, you know, there's like the media portrayal and there's the real portrayal.
Yeah.
People would be like, well, that was a strange bird.
Right?
Yeah. Like would they know?
And how many times do we see things that are paranormal that we don't realize are paranormal because they look real?
Yeah.
Or they're just so strange you can't.
Your brain just blocks it out.
Yeah, well, that's strange.
Well, you know, it made me think of something that I love, Seriah, and that is like in a lot of like older books, and especially Keel had a couple cases in his older books. I believe The Eighth Tower is what I'm thinking of, but I love those cases from like the 60s and 70s where people would report seeing like a giant 747 commercial jet.
Yes.
Upside down, just hovering there.
Yep.
That's terrifying to me. I don't know why.
It's horrifying. It's one of my favorite things, though, for some reason that like that visual in my head is so disturbing.
I also remember someone reporting a plane like flying around a water tower very, very slowly and making no noise.
Right.
And he was like, that's not a normal plane. Planes don't do that.
Right.
It's those just slightly out of place things. I had this extremely vivid dream, and I have it written down, but I don't remember the exact date. I was 7 or 8. And in the dream, I was in a parking lot with my friend at the time, and there was a storm going on, and it felt so viscerally real. Like I felt like I was there. You could feel the wind, and this is so strange for a kid, but there was normal lightning, and then all of a sudden this lightning bolt comes down. Looks like a totally typical lightning bolt, but then it just stops and pauses and just stays there, and we're like, what? And then part of it breaks off and kind of like on a hinge, like goes back and forth and breaks off and shatters everywhere, and we're just like, something about that was terrifying to me, to see lightning behave that way. It's just a dream, but just that slightly off thing, or not even slightly, but just that off thing.
It's like a theater prop malfunction. You know,
this reality shouldn't be doing this glitch, and it was terrifying. But that was what my nightmares were frequently like. It's just things like that. So there's something terrifying when what do they call it? The uncanny effect? Like if you see a creature that's just slightly off in some way.
Uncanny valley?
Yeah, but I thought there was another word for it. Something more.
Well, this makes me think, Seriah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you have an experience where you saw kind of, for lack of a better term, a matrix monkey?
A sort of weird,
I just asked about that recently.
Like a glitchy monkey?
Yeah.
It was just like this mutilated sort of grotesque monkey walking out of the cornfield.
Oh, God.
I go back there a lot. I don't like that.
Wren has an experience where he saw, I think as a teenager maybe, or as a young teenager, he wandered off from his parents in the woods, and he saw something that literally looked like digital artifacts of a creature.
Yes.
That's terrifying to me too.
Like some tiger. He saw like all this like weird geometry, like in this like holler.
Yep.
Yeah. I've made him tell me that story like 3 times. Like I love it.
That's just so scary to me. Like I don't know. It's like the backroom stuff or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
it's just like real. I think that, you know, that kind of, well, it's interesting though. I have this like just kind of like pet idea that the absurdity is what helps us remember and lets us know that this is something unusual. It's like when you see a plane, like at a standstill that's upside down. It's like, you're not mistaking that's just like a normal, like mundane human glitch. You're like, something's wrong with reality.
I don't know.
Well, that's why someone blocks it out and doesn't remember it.
Yes.
I don't know if I ever talked about
too
this,
much.
But
what?
So the beginning of my experiences, so I don't know what's what, if stuff is just a brain glitch or if it even matters at some point. But so I remember that and that's what got mentioned is it's exactly 20 years last Sunday since I had my first dream that really started me on this.
We're recording this on September 24th.
Yes. And so that was the 22nd. So that was 20 years. So 9/22 was when I had my first big dream that really just kind of rocked my world and just catapulted me into this stuff. And I talk about the Georgia event when I was 14, but that was more like it got me kind of more like accepting of this stuff. This was...
So the Georgia event is the Ouija board?
Yeah, that was when we took the Ouija board out. That was the sleep paralysis event. So that got me more accepting and more, I guess, open to the stuff, but nothing really happened after that to really get me that interested. So this dream was the big dream that shook me so much that I started really getting into it. And by 2005, that's when I started trying to do the channeling stuff. I was having these almost nightly dreams where they were without any visions, but they were constant communication with these entities apparently, or that, supposedly. And they would ask me questions and then they would put me through these tireless tests. I felt like I wasn't sleeping any of the nights, and I actually ended up getting pretty sick because of it. And I had to put a stop to it, which apparently I was able to do, which was nice. But during those, the whole point of those tests, that was the only time I might get a visual, because it would show me something and be like, what do you see? And I would have to describe to them what I saw. And they're like, wrong. That's what you expect to see. Look again. I'm like, I don't know what you're trying to, I don't know what? And it was over and over and over. I never quite got it, but I was like, I don't know what I was supposed to be seeing. They're like, that's exactly it. Stop trying to see it and just see it. And I'm like, what? It made me crazy, but it made sense conceptually when I woke up, and I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Did I need psychedelics or something? Because it would be like a nice park scene, and I would be in it, and it would be fully immersive. And they're like, that's not it. You need to look again. You're just seeing what you expect.
And what would you see when you looked again?
It might be slightly changed, but again, that was just my brain projecting what it expected to see onto. It was just creating this thing, and they're like, trying to show me something that was so alien to me that there was no way that I could conceive of it. And that was it. It's just, there was nothing in my brain to understand what I was looking at in the dream, especially in a dream realm like that. It's just, there's really no hope.
I mean, I've had that happen where they've stopped me and asked me questions, and I wasn't allowed to wake up until I answered them.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. That came out like I had a dream. I was in a place like there's a local record store called Record Archive, which actually has a Tyrannosaurus sex. There's a thing. Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton there.
I thought it was going to be like that skeleton where they're mounting each other, because that exists.
Tyrannosaurus sex sounds like a guar band.
It
does. But anyway, it's a record store, but they have a lot of other miscellaneous kitschy little things, toys and stuff like that. And I'm in the dream, and it's sort of like that, but it's not that. And I'm on some upper level on literally like a scaffolding, looking for Voivod records. Because for some reason in dreams, I'm always looking for Voivod records. I have no idea why. And as I go to leave the place, I get to the middle, and there's like a circle where you come in and exit, like by the registers. And as I get there, suddenly I'm stuck in the circle, and I'm fully aware I'm now not awake. And they're like, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life? And I'm like, whoa, I have no idea. And I keep thinking to myself, well, this was bad, but then this good thing came of it. If I hadn't done that, then this wouldn't have happened. And if I hadn't done that, then this wouldn't have happened. And I'm kind of like, I don't know. And I finally picked something. And then they even showed me an image of, what was it? It was my mom coming in to tell me my dad had died. And I'm like, that didn't actually happen. I found my dad dead. So I had to tell her. So this wasn't even like a real, like, why are you showing me this? And finally I answered them, and I was allowed to wake up.
It sounds like that's so strange. But it sounds like therapy, but also like somebody's trying to get information from you to scam you or something. I don't know how to put that.
Paranormal
shakedown.
Scammers.
It's the tricksters.
It's only a matter of time. Paranormal scammers. They'll get into your dreams.
Exactly.
They'll get your info.
They'll get into your dreams in the past.
Oh man.
Ugh.
But yeah, those I've had dreams like that a few times where I've been suddenly out of the dream and either given information or asked things, and I'm not allowed to wake up until I answer. And it's never an easy question.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Doesn't
It's
sound
like, but it's so personally focused, and these dreams I had were it was similar but very impersonal. It was like they were over and over trying to get me to understand and communicate with them, and I just couldn't do it. And then the weird thing is I had this was the AIM days, like AOL Messenger.
Oh.
And so I had friends that were only on there, and I wouldn't really tell them about this stuff. And they're like, oh, so I had a dream that I think you'll understand. It was supposed to be like these things that knew you, and they put me through these tests, and I'm like, what? And it only happened once or twice to them, but it scared me so deeply. I'm like, wow.
That's fascinating.
Like, I don't know. And they wouldn't really remember what the tests were.
Right.
There was one where the friend, and I have this documented somewhere because I was at least smart enough to save it back then, where basically he said that he saw it in the tree and he didn't know anything about paranormal stuff at all. And he's like, it had like that predator look in the tree, and it came down and it was putting him through this test over and over again. And he's like, I didn't pass it, and it never happened again to him. But again, we didn't have a kind of friendship where we were talking about that stuff. I'm like, I don't know.
Interestingly, when I had Jeremy on, he said at the end of the Ouija board sessions, they were told they would all be tested. And then they all had a weird thing happen to them afterwards. And Jeremy's was what he initially interpreted as his alien abduction experience.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I didn't know about it until he released the episode of Paratopia.
So is this a thing?
Where they have the recordings of the sessions. He was like, I don't know, 13, 14,
gives me
15,
chills.
something like that.
If anybody else has experiences like that, I need to know about it, because this was, I at the time especially I was joining alien UFO forums and stuff and asking people, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm like, it seems like they would know, but nobody had it. It was alienating, no pun intended.
Well, yeah, and so he said they literally said that he tested, but I didn't know he had. And Jeremy's not someone I would have associated with Ouija boards.
Yeah,
but it came up because it was a weird thing that happened early in his life, and they talked about it in Paratopia, which I never heard originally. So he put those up, and I'm like, Ouija board, and I'm kind of curious what their opinions of Ouija boards on. And he had everything there was all kinds of weird paranormal stuff that happened to them. And they have some of the recordings because they just had a tape recorder going when they did some of the sessions. He brought on a friend of his who was there that he was still in touch with, and she was able to fill in more of the story that he didn't remember. So when I brought him on, I had him tell the story as well.
So they didn't document any of this at the time?
They did. They had it recorded. They recorded a lot of the sessions.
That's what we did too. That's why I have all the Ouija sessions on transcribed.
But there was I think the thing ended with something really scary happened, and I think Satan came through. That's what it was. Satan came through the Ouija board.
It's always Satan.
Jeremy and his punk friend were basically like, oh yeah, prove it. And as soon as they said that, a vase exploded and something else happened, and the radio in the other room came on and started just going to weird staticky things. And they were he said that I think he and his punk friend just started crying.
Whoa.
And then they had the girl who claimed to be a medium, and her mother claimed to be a medium. The mother came in and what are you messing with? And then she asked her uncle to come in and fix everything, get rid of this thing. And the radio turned to a nice radio station. And I think, if I remember right, Jeremy said he couldn't remember whether or not the radio was plugged in or not, but his friend was absolutely certain that Jeremy walked into the room and went, this radio's not even plugged in.
Whoa.
I had stuff that was physically happening around the Ouija sessions. It happened during it, but I'd have to look it up because I don't remember exactly. I know that so there was stuff about if they materialized, it had to be under specific conditions, and the conditions we were living in, which was muggy swamp butt Houston, were not conducive to it. And they also didn't like the cold compressed air that we had to have. So they threatened to, we were trying to get them to manifest essentially.
Right.
And they're like, well, we can't do that when it's so cold in your place and we don't like the compressed thing. So we're going to have to break that. And it broke.
Oh, that's not cool.
There was other stuff too. It wasn't because it was definitely very hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it took us a while to actually get it fixed, so that was miserable. And I'm like, okay, is that just coincidental? We went out there, we had to like try to fix it, and it looked like it had been like crowbarred or something.
Wow.
But it happened while we were sitting there, and it just stopped working.
Right.
It didn't sound like somebody bludgeoned it or anything. It just didn't work. I'm like, okay, that's just either coincidence, or I didn't really want that to be real.
Yeah.
But this is something that Mark, he was the person, so he will definitely remember that, because it was kind of traumatic. It was
Not the
great.
kind of sign you're looking for.
But it wasn't Satan, or at least they didn't say it was Satan.
Right.
So
Yeah.
and it could have just been BS that they're, I don't know, who knows if it even needs any physical things like that. It was just interesting that it was trying to come up with these almost like, I don't know, like these materialist things that like, oh, we can only come through if it's like this and that. But it was talking about, and I still haven't looked that up, but it was talking about how we needed to be an encased metal if it really was going to manifest or something. Like it needed these specific conditions.
Ah,
Whoa.
And then when I lived in that trailer afterward,
well, it's encased metal.
specific
Yeah.
conditions were met, and that was a lot of stuff going on until we moved. So interesting times, but I really want to know more about this testing thing, because it just doesn't really come up. Do you remember anything specific, like what kind of questions were asked or anything?
About with Jeremy? No, because none of them realized that's what was happening to them. Like,
So how did they figure it was testing? Like, what did it
well, they
feel
were
like?
told they were each going to be tested. And then each of them had one paranormal experience, really intense paranormal experience afterwards. And so they didn't necessarily put two and two together right away.
I love this and I hate this. I need to know more.
He's also, what did he say? They would feel heat coming off the board. And when I had Lorna on with the Ghost Hunters of the Finger Lakes, they said there were a number of Ouija boards that she like cleared out that Peter said you could put your hand next to, you could feel cold air on the board.
Cold air I'm okay with, but that thing is way too flammable for me to be comfortable with the heat.
Yeah, the heat, that I haven't heard heat before. I've heard cold
like
before. But,
Yeah,
if it was Satan, that makes total sense, right?
It does. That's his trademark.
Coming straight out of the magma in the middle of the earth.
I mean, pretty much every episode of Paratopia is worth listening to, but those, if you're interested in the Ouija stuff, you look those up.
Yeah.
I get so
definitely will.
bored of stories, but when they're unique like that, then it has my attention.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can only hear the same basic paranormal story so many times, but it's usually because the people are leaving stuff out because they're afraid it's, going to make it sound ridiculous.
I'm interested. Why don't you hear more stories about Ouija boards in conjunction with like psychedelic experiences? Do people not just break out the Ouija when they're...
I guess it, yeah.
And then are they boring experiences? What's going on
It
there?
might be kind of boring while you're on psychedelics. You're like, I don't know, man, let's go outside and stand on the porch. That's a little cooler.
It's so funny. Like, it's such a specific experience. You think that would amplify it, but then I just don't hear any stories. And I've never tried it myself. Maybe I shouldn't knock it until I try it, but I thought that was interesting.
Well, I mean, Crowley was all about ingesting as many drugs as he could before performing ritual magic. So there's a precedent for it.
That does seem kind of tribal human.
Ironically, the one that did him in was the heroin, which he was not doing for ritualistic purposes.
No, that doesn't.
Right.
That seems to be more of a dampener kind of. Opioids are not great for that.
Yeah, well, he was prescribed that from a doctor at the time because of his severe asthma.
What does it do for asthma? Never heard of that.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I think it'd be the opposite.
Just makes you feel good, I guess.
I think it was asthma. It's been a while, but I know that was prescribed to him, and he got addicted to it, and he hated the fact that he was addicted to it.
It'll make you care less about suffocating.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who literally set records as a mountain climber.
Yeah. He was like an athlete, master yogi.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
If you've got the particular nervous system that really gets an immediate kick from opioids, it's not good.
Yeah.
It's an immediately not good thing.
Did you say you haven't done hallucinogens, Steve?
I've done them.
Oh,
Yeah.
Have you had any weird experiences on them?
Nothing that really is like, was transcendent other than like just, man, this is really great. No, I've always done it with groups, never like by myself. And it's always more probably focused on having a good time and listening to music and hanging out outside. But yeah, I've never done it in like, with the intention of like using it to, try to precipitate a high strange experience, which I think would be interesting, but also probably pretty scary.
Depending.
Because I'm sorry.
Depending,
yeah. I mean, like, I think anytime someone does psychedelics, they should probably be with somebody else.
Yeah.
Just in case. Like, I'm not sure if it's like, unless you're an experienced psychonaut, I think it's kind of a buddy system situation.
I always found Adam Gorightly's story about seeing a UFO with someone else who, when they were both tripping, fascinating.
Yes.
Okay, I was just about to ask
too.
if there's any stories, because it feels like all the people, like psychonauts and stuff that I know, don't really have deep high strangeness anything.
There was more to that. It's been a while since I heard the story. Do you remember it, Steve?
I do. So yeah, him and his friend were, on an LSD, and I think they even said, I think this is like wouldn't it be awesome if we saw a UFO?
Yeah, I think so.
And they do, but I think one of the, aside of it's interesting in general, but I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that they both saw kind of different things. But they both saw an object.
Did they see it in the same location?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I might be wrong about them
location?
seeing two different objects, but for some reason that stands in my head. I think they said it looked like a Ferris wheel or something like that.
I know it was Michelangelo said that. I think it was him that said that. During these rituals and stuff, people will see similar things, or they'll have at least in the same location or something like that. There will be shared experiences like that. Particularly with LSD. I don't know if it happens as much with like psilocybin or ayahuasca.
So I wonder if it's connected
I could be
to the
totally
location.
forgetting though.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it would make some sense if you from a parapsychological standpoint, that there would be some connection when you get into the ritual space, even without the psychedelics. And I would think that might help amplify it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right. This is a quick mid-show break. Contact info and a recommendation. So if you want to contact us, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. Actually, if you just go to the website, it will pop up a little messenger that you can connect with me directly on. But all the other contact info is there as well as all of our social media. And you can find all the shows going all the way back to the very first one. Back in 2013. So if you have a story you'd like to share, you can contact me at stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. And send stuff along there, and we will eventually do another listener stories show. You can also join into our Discord and everything else. There's tons of stuff there. If you like heavy music, check out my music show, The Last Exit for the Lost. That can be found at thelastexit.org, and there are tons of archived shows there. The new ones are all on Mixcloud, which you can just get an app for and listen whenever you want. As far as recommendations, I'm going to go with a series called Hysteria, which you can get on Peacock, and it guest stars Bruce Campbell, but Bruce is actually in it a lot. It kind of is a sort of like campy, satanic panic sort of thing. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun and definitely captured that level of 80s nonsense, I guess you should say. I don't know, nothing too deep. It's just it's a fun ride, and it's there's some reality in there as well. So check it out. If it sounds like it's up your alley, Hysteria with an exclamation point. All right, back to the show. So you're listening to Where Did the Road Go? And I'm talking with Steve Berg and Natalie.
I'm not here.
Actually lives here. About
I live
stuff.
Right here.
Well,
I don't
there,
move from this spot.
Up a level.
Well, up a level and diagonal.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Sometimes up a level, but yeah.
You always comment
We
that
won't
weird
split
stuff
hairs.
happens when I'm gone for extended periods.
It hasn't happened lately, and I'm really disappointed. I need you to do something about that. It's getting kind of boring.
But the interesting thing is, my now ex, when she lived here, said the same thing. So anytime I left, there'd be voices and other stuff. And even when I was a teenager and stuff, if I left and spent the night somewhere, there'd be weird phone calls and other strange
Oh, no,
things.
please don't ever. If that starts, nope.
You wouldn't hear the phone anyway.
Yeah, but if it was my cell phone, that's even worse.
And the thing is, like, she would answer the phone calls, but she couldn't hear the person on the other end, other than the fact they'd been asking for me.
That's horrifying. You didn't tell me
I'd
that.
just be frustrated, like, who was calling me? Like, nobody, like, I couldn't think of anyone it would have been.
That's absolutely horrifying, and I have to keep the phone near me now when you're gone, so I can get terrified. But the interesting thing is, I won't always know that you've left for the night, and then weird stuff happens. I'm like, I wonder if he's gone for the night, and then it will end up being that you are. I'll like check to see if the car is gone or whatever. So it's not always me knowing.
Right.
It knows, but I don't.
Well, there was the one of the weeks you weren't here because you had gone wherever you went. I don't remember the last trip, which trip it was you were on. But
I don't know. I wandered off somewhere.
And my sound guy's girlfriend's in here alone.
Oh, I love this story.
And so she's already a little spooked by this place. And I come in and she's like, Natalie's back, right? And I'm like, no.
Only in
She's
spirit.
like, oh, don't tell me that. And I'm like, why? And she's like, I've heard footsteps, doors. And I'm like, what? Wait, doors. And I go up and I check, and I had left one of the doors that doesn't shut up, doesn't like actually latch. I have a little hook on it, and I had not put the hook back. And I'm like, it's windy out. This door's probably like just shifting.
I've had that happen to me, and I know how terrifying it is.
And so I latch it. I'm like, well, I can explain the door. What about the footsteps? I'm like, I got nothing, but maybe it'll stop now that the door stopped. And like we're sitting there, and a few minutes later, we hear footsteps. And she just looks at me. I'm like, no, I heard them too. Yeah, I don't know.
So wait, was the door open?
Door was shut.
Oh, it shut itself? Like it slammed
I think it was shut, but I think it was just the wind was the suction of the room.
Okay,
was kind of moving
I don't know if you actually saw it or something.
And then pushing it back shut as it shifted.
There was a time when I went up there and it was wide open, and I was like, it was like my heart stopped. I'm like, and you're like, oh yeah, it does that. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, and the wind has to be just right for it to do that.
Yeah, apparently.
But yeah, the footsteps, I had no explanation. It's like we had a band in here, and I'm talking to them about weird stuff in the house during the music show. And I said, yeah, sometimes there's footsteps from the hallway over there. And it was the bass player, I think. And he just kind of goes, wait, what? and I'm like, there are footsteps. He's like, there's nobody else back there? And I'm like, no, why? He's like, because I heard footsteps from back there.
That's like the time that we were sitting there. I don't know if I can do. Well, the sound guy's girlfriend and I were sitting there shooting the poop, as you do, and not thinking about anything weird, as one also does. And we heard the footsteps in the hallway, so we thought you came in the back door or the side door there.
Right.
And that's all we thought. So we just both kind of casually turned to address you. And there's nothing there. And these footsteps were loud. We thought we thought you were angry and like stomping down or doing something goofy.
Yes, my normal angry stance.
I don't know. We thought maybe one of the band came in. We didn't know. It was just like we just assumed it was you coming in that door.
Right.
It was so loud.
Well, whatever was so loud that knocked the bookend off the.
Steve, do you know about that?
No.
Do you know? Because there's footage.
Yeah, I
you can hear it.
That up.
We have actual evidence of these footsteps.
So,
oh my God.
So this is the thing. I come home from wherever I was, walking toward the house, and I hear this loud bang, and I'm like, "What the hell was that?" And I like can't even imagine what it was. And I'm thinking, did it come from the neighbors and it just like echoed over the house or something?
And mind you, I was in the shower on the complete other end of the house. I didn't cause it. I didn't do it.
Right. And so I come in, don't see anything amiss. Later, I noticed that I had a band, this band of Skrilla, gave me a candle with their logo and stuff on it, and I had it using it as a bookend.
It's one of those glass votive candles, like the tall.
Sure.
Yeah, and so it's sitting there on the. I walk out of the back room at some point later that night, and I notice the books are kind of like laying to the side, and I'm like, what happened here? Oh, there's the candle. It's on the ground. Oh, it hit the heater. That must have been what happened earlier. Is it must have fallen and hit the heater? And I'm like, that's weird. Why would it have? It must have just worked its way slowly loose until it lost its balance.
Logical, rational.
So I put everything back up. I set it there. I'm like, okay. And then a few minutes later, I'm like, is it on camera? So I start running back through the Wise Cam footage. I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. Yep, just fell over. And then I turned the sound on.
Why did you do that?
And then you hear
what possessed
boom,
you?
Boom, 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 like someone stomping into the room, and then it falls.
I had the idea because it was clearly coming from the hallway. I'm like, well, what about the kitchen footage? And it's definitely on there coming from the kitchen end of the hallway going into the library all the way down.
It's not super loud on the kitchen.
It's pretty obvious. It's definitely obvious.
Did the candle look like it like just fell off like kind of like limply, or did it look like it got shoved off?
It looks like it fell off due to vibration.
Right.
Yeah, it just kind of falls.
Right. Yeah, but the thing is, like, I went in that room. That part of the house was built in 1995. It's not that old. It's not particularly shaky. And I went in there, and I'm a big guy, and I'm jumping up and down, and nothing's moving.
It is by far the most stable part of the house.
And I'm like, how much vibration would, and we're hitting the walls, and then for a while, Natalie's like, maybe it was a raccoon on the roof.
Reenact it. Yeah, because that's one thing. The raccoons know when you leave, and they don't always know that I'm here, so they start throwing parties. And I was like, that would make sense. And sometimes then I'll get up and stomp around and yell, and they'll go quiet, like, oh.
So the footprints, though, like seem to be kind of like varied. Like sometimes in that instant, it seems like it's kind of like an aggressive stomp.
Yeah,
but when you hear it upstairs, like Natalie, when you heard it upstairs, like earlier, with the door situation, or like if the band member heard it, like for these different, events,
they didn't specify.
Does it sound the same or different?
When I heard it with my soundman's girlfriend, it was subtle, so it was hard to tell. It wasn't stomping.
So it sounded like, you said it sounded like me.
Yeah, it sounded like you being up there.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
And I walk very, very quietly, but the floorboards definitely give me away.
Yeah, this house was built in like the 1850s.
Oh my gosh, that's very old. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not,
it's a farmhouse. It's definitely legit.
It's not a super strong structure. You walk through the room, everything shakes a little bit. That's not unusual.
Which honestly is scarier because, okay, one more footstep story. When you left, where did you go? Like Rochester? I have this written down somewhere. But again, I don't want to look it up because that's more time. But I think you went to Rochester to see a band. And so I was here alone. But it was in the day. It was still kind of light out. I didn't have any worries. It was fine. And I was upstairs. So if you go straight up the stairs, just to give an idea of where I am, straight up the stairs and just a little, if you go to the right, there's basically where my bedroom is. So it's not that far from the stairs. If my door's open, I can hear pretty well. Somebody's coming up the stairs. Whereas like at the bottom of the stairs. And so it's also right above the dining room where a lot of activity happens, which is off from the kitchen, which is off from the door. What it sounded like happened is it sounded like somebody came in the side door, which goes into the kitchen, and walked quite heavily and kind of angrily into the dining room right below where I was sitting, and then right over to the steps and stopped. And I just sat there listening. Like, here's the thing, because this place there's no subfloor or anything. So architecturally, if you step on the bottom floor below me, like on the ground floor, I guess, it sort of depresses the walls and everything else. So I can feel if somebody's walking, even if I can't hear it, but I could feel and hear this. It was very clearly somebody came in, and I'm like, well, that's not good. Something must have happened. Like the car broke down or something. And I'm like concerned about that. I wasn't thinking about anything weird. I just thought something bad happened. So I texted you and I'm like, did you come home or something like that? I have the text still. And you're like, no. And my it's just the cold, like that cold sweat. And I'm like, just sitting there like totally frozen. Like, what do I do? Who is that? And honestly, my first thought is like, oh my God, there's an intruder. So I had you check the cameras.
Right.
I should have had you listen, and I didn't.
Yeah.
We just checked visually to see if anybody was there, because I'm like, oh my God, somebody came in the house. So I was not even thinking about weird then. But then when it was like nobody there, I'm like, I even more have no idea what to do. So that was kind of my first experience with the footsteps. No, incorrect. That was the third time I'd heard footsteps. Because when I first got here, I would be making food for the cats, and I would hear it. I always thought it was you coming down the hall.
Oh, right.
And it happened 3 separate times, and I would go look because I thought you were coming down. Then it would stop, and I'd be like, "What's he doing? Is he just standing there?" And it was like, I'm like, what's happening? And I would go look each time, and the cats' heads would turn and look each time. Right. But they wouldn't go investigate or anything. And I'm like, I don't know is this a thing? That's when I asked you.
And the current cat is terrified of the hallway.
I don't blame him at all.
Cats always know.
He'll start to walk through the hallway and then either jump and run, or he'll like look like something's about to jump on him. And it's like, stop. And he's, of course, walking directly in front of you when he does this.
Why is it always halls? Oh, it's like that time in Alamogordo, New Mexico. That was the trailer house, by the way, that we moved in. It was a nice mobile home. And it was really kind of not secluded. It was like in this little community. It was really idyllic and nice, right outside of White Sands. And like the day we moved in, we started having trouble with that hall. And we were like, what's wrong? Is it the furnace? Because the furnace room was in there. And we were trying to like suss it out. Like, what's wrong with this place? And we talked to the landlord even. That hallway was absolutely the center of terror for about a year and a half. And I will never forgive it. But it got worse. Even my bird hated it. Everything about that hall, the dog hated it. It was not good times. But there was this, and I have video evidence of this. This is the best part. I didn't just take photos. We pulled up one night it was, dark night because we were night people, and we went out hiking, and we pulled up, and there was like a normal chain link fence around the yard, and weeds have grown up on it. That's normal. The weeds very clearly spell out hall.
Whoa.
I showed this to a therapist once. I'm like, you need to know what my life is like. And I don't know if I'm psychotic, but this is what happened. Told her the whole story I just relayed now. Showed her that. And she like got up out of her chair. It's not like a pareidolia thing. It says HALL. Like if somebody did it on purpose.
Like how are they affixed?
They look like they grew or blew there or both. They're just dried grass stalks.
Oh, so it's like on the ground.
No, it was on the fence. It's like actually on the fence. As if somebody. It looked like somebody arranged it to say hall.
Ooh, that's creepy.
It was not great. I didn't know what to think of it, so I just I have the video because you can hear like this creepy squeaking of the gate, and it's just the car's headlights on it because we pulled up and the headlights illuminated it. Like right there, like it was meant to be seen. I don't know. Maybe just coincidence, but that is.
But you said you had video of it, huh?
I got video of it where it says hall because I wanted to get that effect of you can see the weeds just kind of blowing a little bit. I didn't just want to take a photo.
Lord. Yeah. That's wild. That is really wild.
I just like showing it to a therapist and she got so upset.
She's like, uh-oh.
So going back to Paratopia, Jeff Ritzman would often talk about most of the experiences in any place he lived happened near the bathroom. And somebody else, I don't remember who it was, also said to him, yeah, that's not uncommon. Maybe it was Roundtree or someone who said, but they thought it had something to do with the water, like they were using water for energy or whatever. But that doesn't totally make sense because there's lots of other places there's water in a house.
Yeah, the pipes are running through everywhere.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, this hallway has the bathroom right off.
I was going to say, and the trailer home had the bathroom, and I had really weird experiences related to both.
And speaking of Jeff, Jeff Richmond, I was a great fan of his stories and the way he looked at this phenomenon. But he had hallway issues too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they were right around his bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, hallways are liminal, I guess, but
yeah, they are.
They don't all have bathrooms, and that seems to be a commonality for some reason.
I feel like there need to be doctors for this. Yeah, I'm having hallway issues.
Well, I will say, like, if you ever, like, I'm sure you have, when you like go to any hotel, Holiday Inn, whatever, like, and you like check in late, and you go to the third floor, room 304, where your room is or whatever. And you look down the long hallway and you just hear like the hum of the lights. Mm-hmm. It feels very liminal and psychedelic and high strange. You know what I'm saying? Like, it really and that's why it's like, absolutely liminal. Filmmakers use like hotel hallways all the time for like depth of field purposes. But like because there is a foreboding feeling about, especially hotel hallways.
It's never a place you're going to sit down and sleep or lie down. It's not a place you're ever going to stop.
Right.
Yeah.
For any amount of time, you absolutely have to be moving through that area.
Yes. Yes.
I have never stayed in a hotel.
Really?
I've been in hotels. I've never stayed in hotels.
Oh, you're not missing much.
Apparently my doppelganger checked into one once.
What?
Of course.
I don't know that story.
You don't know that story?
No.
It was,
I know your doppelganger story, but let's hear it. I love it.
This was Fort Fest.
Cliff notes, I guess, if it bores everybody else.
Fort Fest, I don't know what year, 2014, whichever year I spoke at Fort Fest. So me being me, this was obviously pre-COVID, so I had the last exit to do, so I couldn't do it on Saturday, so she put me on Sunday. But I was also there with Joshua and Mike Hughes.
Nice.
So Mike and everyone showed up Saturday, and then just stayed till Sunday. But I had the radio show to do. So I was up Saturday and then did the radio show all Saturday night. And then at 6 a.m. drove to Maryland for Fort Fest and stayed there till like 9:30 or something. But she got me a hotel room anyway, even though I said I wasn't staying. And she got me the hotel room to shared room with Mike Hughes. So Mike messages me and goes, "Are you here?" And this is on Saturday. And I'm like, "Nope, I'm not there till tomorrow morning some point." And he's like, "Okay, that's what I thought. So apparently you're checked in." I'm like, "What do you mean I'm checked in?" He's like, "I just went to check in because we're sharing a room and it says you're already checked in and the girl said she saw you."
What?
And I'm like, "Cool. Whatever it is not me, Mike."
That gives credence to the whole footsteps being you thing.
Maybe.
You just keep checking into the hallway.
I love that hallway.
There's 2 Seriahs.
I had that happen in high school, junior high, actually, where I showed up late for school. I was the only person in that school that had long hair and wore concert shirts. And that was right when I was getting into metal. And I go in for a late pass. And they're like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "A late pass?" And they're like, "But you've been here. We've watched you walk up and down the hallway." 2 women sitting in the office were absolutely certain they saw me walking back and forth in the hallway for like the last half hour.
What?
It happened to me once with my brother, actually. It was when I was going to visit Houston, and he saw me walking on the side of the road. And then when he turned around, I was gone. He's like, "But I know it was you because I know you your whole life, and I know how you walk, and I know everything." I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he even stopped because he was going to turn around and pick me up because he's like, "What are you doing on the side of the road?"
Yeah.
And then it was the person or whatever was just like not there.
Interesting.
And that was the only time anybody's reported it, other than apparently I'm walking upstairs when I'm gone.
Right, yes. You're still here when you're not.
I mean, I have to be.
Unlike
Who else is going to occupy that space?
Unlike the time in Wegmans where you were supposed to be there and you were apparently invisible.
That is by design. I wasn't trying to do it that time.
It reminds
twice.
me.
It's happened twice now.
Has it happened
at 2
twice?
different Wegmans.
Really?
Maybe Wegmans brings it out in me. Yeah, because it was one time I was sitting on the bench and one time I was just standing there. And both times you went right past me.
But just standing there and me, that could have just been me not paying attention.
Maybe, but I was making myself obvious on the curb.
That doesn't matter.
I should have just jumped out in front of the car.
I will totally admit that could just be my brain not seeing things. Because I am
So did you see an
at that.
empty bench?
Yes, that's the thing. The bench was distinctly empty because I knew that's where you were waiting. And I'm like, "Where the hell are you?" And I stopped and I looked around and you weren't anywhere. And I thought, well, you must have walked out to the car. So I walked out to the car and she's not there. And so I message her and I'm like, "Where are you?" And you're like, "On the bench." And I'm like, "No, I just walked by and I'm thinking, is there another bench?" And so she comes right out because I can see the door. And I'm like, okay. And then the next time we go in there, I'm like, "Was it that bench?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "No, that bench was freaking empty."
I meant the other bench is slightly askew from this reality, obviously.
Yeah, it's a little vortex right there.
Shirley Black had an experience like that too, where someone was waiting for her in the lobby of a hotel, and she walked in, didn't see him, went up to her room, called him, and he's like, "I'm in the lobby." And she's like, "I just walked through the lobby." He's like, "No, you didn't."
I'm surprised it didn't happen to her like she did it. Seems like something that would be her style.
She might have done it.
That's true.
Well, it does kind of remind you of like those stories of like time slips, where I think Whitley Strieber's got a famous one in the Magic Castle, but like, there's like, where people just either will. I mean, I've never heard of like the time slip, whatever, if it's even real. But like, I've never heard it associated with like walking by and not seeing someone, like someone was not being there. It's almost like a reverse time slip.
It's something that I've learned to do because of harassment. And I don't know. I mean, I've never thought about it having like a paranormal sort of effect, but I've had weird experiences on buses and stuff. But just being out is sort of a habit to disappear. Like just try to blend in and not exist. And so nobody will bother me. So it's just sort of, it might be like an unconscious habit, but I don't know how to explain not being on the bench.
Right.
Maybe it's gotten really out of control.
I mean, like I said, the other one I have a friend from another radio show I help out with, who is a big guy. He's well over 300 pounds. He's a tall guy. He was wearing a bright red death metal shirt at a concert that I went to. There were maybe 30 people there, and I didn't see him. Apparently walked by him many times. I was looking for him. I didn't see him. And finally I messaged him and said, there's a severe lack of you here. And he's like, dude, you've walked past me like 10 times. And I'm like, what? What? And then he tells me where he is, and I look, and I'm like, you are there.
Oh, my God.
Okay, well, it's just my brain.
Do you find, because it sounds like, like Seriah, you've had a lot of experiences. Like, have you found that, like, as you've, evolved and had more experiences, that you tend to be less, like, tripped out by them or freaked out by them and are able to just kind of integrate it into your life? Or is it still just like, whoa, this is disturbing?
No, and they've slowed down a lot. So I don't know what's actually caught, like if my brain just doesn't have the capacity it once did to, because, I dance around the neurodivergence thing, but I definitely have ADHD, which, makes you process differently and it makes you process faster. I'm almost certainly on the autism spectrum. So that means that all sensory data is just kind of coming in, and they know now that people with autism, specifically what makes us the way we are, is our neurons don't really filter out the extraneous data. So, and there's a lot of people in the autism community that report quote unquote paranormal experiences.
Right.
I also think there's a lot more people that are on the autism spectrum than realize they are.
Realize they're on the autistic spectrum?
Yeah.
Or, you always know to some degree that you're odd. You just don't know what diagnosis is supposed to.
Yeah.
What kind of peg you fit into what hole or whatever.
There's a friend of mine recently who I am sure is on the spectrum. And Natalie, you've met this person and also agreed that they were definitely on the spectrum. And when I suggested it to them, they went, really? Oh, interesting. And I was like, yeah. Oh, that's never been suggested to you before? All right.
Wait, I don't remember who was this with, male or female, because that makes a difference.
I'll tell you later.
Gender.
Well, I think for one thing, it is diagnosed so much more. I mean, so is ADHD.
Finally,
like all these kinds of I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, I just said finally. It's finally getting diagnosed.
Yeah,
more.
No, but like it is something that is like, tremendously more diagnosed now. And I feel like if you're like, 40 or above, you had to probably be like, I don't know if it was severely autistic, but like very apparently autistic to be diagnosed.
Yeah, and I started masking early, so they're like, well, for one thing, women can't have it, girls can't have that. I'm like, they're like, well, it's probably PDD NOS or something, just real mild. I'm like, God. I am struggling, but thank you.
Is that really what they said?
They did say that. It's in my records. It was definitely gendered. In fact, at that point, I was lucky. I didn't get an ADHD diagnosis until I was 11, even though it was painfully obvious.
Right.
I have homework that I've saved that is basically just me scribbling on it and just being like, I don't like school. Screw you all. It was just like, I was a little punk. I hated the structure. I was just not into it. So that much was obvious. They actually told, there's a pejorative in here. They said it was the R word at the time. And so they brought me in for testing at the school, and they're like, oh, that IQ is way too high to call that person anything like that. But this is definitely ADHD. So congratulations. And then I got diagnosed as a teen, and then as a young adult, and then older adult. So I have 4 diagnoses for ADHD, but never once have they ever been like really accepting that women can have autism. It just doesn't happen until fairly recently. And I mean, like within like the last decade, has it become more common? Yeah, it's wild.
We're also out of time, so we'll continue this on a Patreon if you're both willing.
Oh, that's a good one.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you, Steve?
You can find me on social media at Bergmaster5000, and I have a podcast, which Seriah was a guest, which will be coming out next week, and it's called Hi, H-I, Strangeness, like you're saying hi to strangeness.
And that'll also be in the past by the time people hear this. So
that's exactly true. This is good point. Natalie, but we're messing around with time and like linearity anyways.
Why not? We're twiddling the knobs of time.
We're twiddling the knobs.
Anywhere people can contact you, Natalie?
Oh, you can find me upstairs, listening for footsteps. But also, I mean, you just type in EO Rhythm on Google or look me up, Motley Grew on Facebook or Instagram. That's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you both. All right. I'd like to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons for their support. Without you, this show would not be possible. And I want to give a shout out to those of you pledging $10 or more. Greg Ross, John Blackburn, Madeline J., Matt in Delaware, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Marthartha, Midnight Review Presents, Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Illuminati, Bright Rectangle, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy and Communicable, Corey Nelson, Craig Parmenter, Diane B., MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, History and Coffee, J. Otto Bullitt, Jack Huntington, James Lindsay, Jim and Sophie, John Mattingly, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linda, Linz Jackson K., MJ Armstrong, Mark Brady, Sasha McHale, Schmooples, Devourer of Mortal Souls, Marty Garza, Mark Shoemaker, Jonathan Frost, Ole Andre Olar, Paul Jeffries, Perry Peters, Philosopher of Mirrors, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Sarah Horgan, Stacy Sherwood, Stevie Norman, Strange Stories with the Seeker and Skeptic podcast, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Varosh K, Victoria, Vincent Trewell, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Wren Collier, Annabelle Smith, Caroline Walker, TDT Skunkworks, Matthew Brown, Colin Karras, and Craig Sagastumi. Thank you all so very much for the support. If you enjoyed that, there is a Patreon extra segment with this show that goes on for quite a bit, if I remember right. If you want to become a patron, it's only $3 a month, and you get extra content almost every week, as well as the show a week early and commercial-free. I want to welcome some new patrons this week. Peter Brogna, Random User 2987, and Kali Reem. I hope I pronounced everyone's name right, especially Random User. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the extra content. See you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.